It's time to revive the connection in your queer relationships. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go on a journey, Dani.
Let's go.
Let's go. We've definitely had to do this many times in our relationship because connection happens when you truly put in an effort. I mean, how many times do we think that our relationships will just continue? I mean, we all know the beginning, the newness of relationships, but it really requires that intentional effort. And we're hopefully going to give you some really clear and tangible ways that you can incorporate connection back into your relationships. How does that sound?
I'm ready for it.
Dani, let's talk about more of a personal experience at first. When are times that you feel disconnected in our relationship? And we're going to use our conversation today as a sample for how you can have conversations in your relationships.
I think the times that I've felt most disconnected is when we're both really just kind of going through the motions of work and life, or we're going through our own individual things. That's for me. What about you?
Yeah, tell me more. I want more details from you.
I mean, I'm not going to talk on like your personal things, but if you're going through something, we tend to disconnect so that you can have your own process of handling your own mental health. Or when it comes to me, like if I'm going through something, whether it's with like my family or just my own emotions, you know, I've tended to pull away in the past to give myself that space to again handle my own mental health.
So let's pause there. Let's focus on the external factors that are always going to be present and affect our relationships.
Like
Stress, career, other relationships, friendships, family relationships, whatever it may be that you may experience as an external factor outside of your relationship, that may be a point of disconnection. So for example, when I'm feeling like something's triggering or bothering me, I usually put up this guard. Dani knows about this guard. We like to name this guard because it's not me. It's something that I use to cope. And a lot of times that will disconnect us and isolate me, and I'll pull myself away because I'll get into that mindset of I can just do this by myself. Like I don't need to lean on anyone. I don't need support. And that's something I actively work through all the time. So for example, if Dani knows that I'm going through something and she starts to feel disconnected, it's her responsibility to communicate that to me. Hey, what's going on? I feel disconnected from you. And it's my responsibility to call out that shield, that coping mechanism, and say, the shield is here again. Like I'm pulling away. I notice myself pulling away. And then for me to ask for what I need. So maybe I do need to go on a hike by myself. Maybe I need an hour to journal. Maybe I need to step away for a bit and then come back. But I'm communicating that with Dani. And then I'm saying, all right, this is what it looks like to reconnect for me. I want to go, sit at a park and I want to talk about whatever it is, so we love talking about food. We love talking about experiences. We love talking about our future of what we have planned and our goals. Like that really drives us and keeps us connected. So maybe we take time where we just hold hands. Let me grab your hand. We hold hands and we just look at each other and we get excited about something that we're both passionate about. And we bring in these points of connection, even using our conversation cards. We have the LGBTQ+ Let's Get Into It deck. If you don't have it, make sure you go grab it. We'll have it linked here. And having a guide where we don't have to put pressure on ourselves to ask those deeper questions, but to actually make time to reconnect after we've pulled away. So I think that you have to look at your relationship dynamic. What is your relationship dynamic? And are you willing to take all things aside, go back to the heart-centered root and understand that you both want to feel connected, you both want to feel loved, or however many partners are in the relationship, and figure out what those points of connection are and what usually brings you back together. You have to identify them.
Well, I think it's also important to figure out what your points of disconnection are to understand what a partner is going through, because there's so many times where we felt disconnected, and I think it's a part of relationships. It's a part of being a human being, and we can't always feel like our closest like all the time to relationships, because we're always evolving as people. We're always learning new things, and we have a limited amount of time. And so like I think where your intentionality goes and your presence goes, that's what you're able to focus on. So I think it's important to figure out where or when you're getting the most disconnected in your relationships. Is everyone involved in the relationship willing to put the intention into learning what it takes to come back together, whether it's using the cards or making intentional time to talk about certain things? Or what does it look like for you when you feel close? Is it just the amount of time that you're spending with someone?
Is it physical touch?
Yeah.
Is it that you need to have that while you're having a deep conversation? Do you need to have those small intimate moments physically in order to bring you back together? Yeah. What does that look like for you? And that's a question you can ask yourself.
And I think it's just depending on your relationship. Like, a lot of people who come to us through coaching are usually in the beginning stages of the relationship, where they're really excited about the relationship and they're spending all this time together, but then they watch it after, how long would you say, just kind of like dropping off of like spending less time together?
3 months.
3 months. Because it's not as new. So they're getting settled in the reality of what it looks like to really be a stable partner in a relationship. And so there's different nuances to what it looks like to build a long-term relationship, and understanding that, the amount of time that someone can give you depends on a million different things. But what works best for everyone involved is what's going to be really important. And there's no right way to figure out how to connect with someone. It's just about what you're looking for and what you need and what everyone else needs.
If there's anything you take away from this podcast, call out the disconnection. Don't just let time go by where you're disconnected. I don't want to say anything. I'm just going to keep letting it go. Call it out. Hey, let's have a conversation. I want to chat about this. Like, this is something that's really bothering me. I know I love feeling connected to you. It's one of my favorite things. I love when we're laughing. I love when we're, openly communicating about whatever it is. What's going on? Can we talk about it? Can we reconnect and come from that heart-centered place instead of blaming, demanding? I think a lot of times
complaining.
People
just making it like pointing fingers.
People can get caught in, you disconnected from me, you pulled away from me, instead of really trying to understand our partner and what that may look like, to ask in a way of, what is it that you need from me? And to be able to communicate that. So that's going to require you to continue to know your emotions, to continue to know yourself in order to have these deeper conversations.
And so that's where I think we talk about the Pride method.
Yeah, so Dani and I have taught the Pride method for the last 3 years, and this is our method that we teach in many different formats, but it really is a way to go back to yourself. It's a way to accept more parts of yourself. It's changed my life. It's changed your life and hundreds of other queer adults that we've worked with. And the Pride method essentially is P, prioritize yourself. R, release unrealistic expectations. I, identify who is this person that you want to become and feel your feelings. And then D, develop that deep loving connection with yourself. And E, explore healing and aligned relationships. So essentially what this Pride method really takes you through is this process of, how do I create routines, frameworks, and ways for myself to really be connected to who I am and to accept who I am, so that I can openly communicate and I can be in relationships where I trust myself. I'm able to speak up. I'm able to walk away when I don't feel supported. I can do all the things because you feel empowered, because you know yourself. And I love that we have that to go back to all the time, because it's just so essential when you're navigating these different life challenges. Relationships are one piece of it. There's so many other things that you're doing in your life that can affect you in a different way. And how do we handle that? How do we separate it? How do we learn how to self-soothe? We teach that all through the Pride method. But I think if there's anything that you can really know and hone in on today, is that you have to prioritize yourself in order to be able to communicate your needs. Does that make sense?
And also, I think there's a level of confidence, like, within that has to be cultivated, because if you're always afraid of losing everyone around you because you're afraid to be alone, it really hinders you from speaking up for what it is that you want and need, and it holds you back from setting boundaries. It holds you back from really understanding yourself, because at top of mind, you're just focused on what you're worried about instead of what it is that you genuinely need. So if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, send us a message on Instagram at Coming Out Happy, because there are other ways that we can definitely support you. We want to be helpful so that you can create healthy, secure relationships. And we get it. Creating healthy, queer relationships is a very difficult thing, because no one is out there teaching you about navigating that confidence within and being secure. But this is something that we've been working on for the last bunch of years, and I think it's really important to know that you have support on your side. You're not doing this alone, and we've seen close to everything when it comes to creating healthy relationships, so we want to be there to support you.
So Dani, how would you inspire somebody who maybe feels very disconnected, they're afraid to have that conversation with their partner, maybe it hasn't gone well in the past? What is something that you would share and invite somebody to do in their relationships to try?
I mean, the most basic answer I would say is figure out what you're needing and simply communicate. But again, it's if you're focused on your fear, it's very hard to communicate. So I think it's about doing that inner work to feel calm and confident when you're asking for what it is that you need, when you want to be in deeper connection with anyone. It doesn't matter who it is, but it's presence of your own mind is how you're able to create deep, meaningful, intentional relationships. But when it's clouded by fear, it just never ends up working.
So let's just go there for a moment, because you may be afraid to start this conversation. You may identify as someone who's not confrontational, but I want to encourage you that speaking about this and using your voice is only going to make things better or give you more answers that you need in order to make a new decision. So if we continue to stay in the, I don't want to communicate this, I'm afraid, what if they reject me, and having those doubts infiltrate your mind and come in and really just take over, we aren't allowing ourselves to truly be authentic, which means we aren't going to get an authentic response. Does that make sense?
It's never made more sense.
So I want you to think about that for a moment. If you don't speak up, you don't give that other person or people an opportunity to show you who they really are. When you speak up, you allow people to see who you are, and it gives them that opportunity to show you who they are. So I want to encourage you to have these conversations about disconnection, because you're in a relationship to connect. We're not in relationships just to be here and have another body around, but to actually connect, to have intimacy, to go deeper, to have someone on your team, to do life together, to share goals, to share a vision. We can't do that if we're not showing up vulnerably and communicating what we need. That is so important if you hear anything today. And you deserve love that feels reciprocated, and it feels like you can be your authentic self and speak up. So if you don't feel like you can communicate what you need, that is something else to question for yourself. Why do I feel like I can't communicate what I need? What happens when I communicate? Does this person judge me? Do I feel shut down? Is it something I need to work through, or is this not a good fit? You have to ask yourself these important questions in order to actually see a new shift, a new change. I don't think you'd be listening to this podcast if you didn't want more connection. So figure out what that is for yourself and go do it. No one will do it for you. I know listening to this podcast be super helpful, but you have to take action on whatever it is that you need. Does that make sense? That was pretty deep.
Definitely.
But
that's what we're here for.
Well, yeah, we don't do it any other way. So let's kind of lighten it a little bit.
Okay.
What is one of your favorite ways to connect with me?
Using our LGBTQ plus couples conversation cards.
Where's your ideal spot to use them?
For us, I like using things like our conversation cards at restaurants, because it's one of the ways where we feel really comfortable and like it's fun and it's an exciting experience. Or using them just like outside if you set up a little picnic. Like, I think those are two different options that work well for us because we feel like we're doing something, you know, out of our normal routine.
Yeah. I want to ask you, what is one of your favorite questions in the deck, if you can think of one on top of your head?
There was one question about, and I remember creating this one. It was about understanding the different roles that we play, because remember, these cards were made for queer couples. So there are a few in there that are about the different roles that we play in the relationship and how we can explore new options because we're not in a traditional relationship. So I think it was like asking about what are the roles that we play, what's different for us, and like how do we like it, you know, like navigating something without those strict rules or boundaries around what it looks like, you know, from maybe our parents or traditional society to like have these different relationships because we're outside of that.
There's a question in there that I believe I read the other day, and it was almost tell me one of the best compliments you ever got. That's one of them, right? You know, I love that because it shows somebody how to love you better, and it gives a lot of insight to what makes you feel lit up inside, what makes you feel excited, what makes you feel like you're cared about and seen.
You can learn so much through going through this card deck. It only has 52 questions, I believe, but even if you're doing it with a friend, like, it helps people just connect and see each other for who we are and what it is that we need and what it is that we love and care about. So I really suggest you go grab them. ComingHappy.com.
I also want to say, to end this, to wrap this up here, one of the most interesting, I almost want to say like errors I see, but I don't know if that's the right word. It's one of the errors that could be easily avoided. And it's understanding the way that you like to receive love versus the way that you give love. And then understanding, because a lot of the time, and I made this mistake for so long, I would love Dani in the way that I wanted to be loved.
It's kind of like
not communicating
projection of like you not asking for what you need, but giving it in hopes that someone else will give it back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I've done that 1,000 times.
I know. I did that with you.
But
if you learn how to love your partner or partners better
by listening and by asking,
then you have the opportunity to love them in the way that they need,
not in the way that you want to give.
And you can work on communicating the way that you need to be loved if you understand that. And that can solve a lot of connection issues. So, yes, I hope that you took something so beautiful away from this episode and you feel inspired. Let us know. Message us on Instagram. What is your biggest takeaway from our connection episode? And reviving also, that.
I want to know what your favorite question in the Let's Get Into It deck is. If you're using them, you're connecting with a partner. What do you love about the card deck, and how is it helping you connect deeper with a partner?
I love it so much. I can't wait to hear. I'm super excited that you're here, that you've been listening to the podcast, and there's so many more episodes that you can check out. We've had experts, we've had amazing interviews, just so much information. And always look at our social, look at our website for what we have coming up next with events, or whether that's with our Queer Social Wellness Club. Check it out. We can't wait. And I'm super excited. So we'll see you all very, very soon. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and you stay up to date with weekly episodes.